Hello, my name is Guy Caruso, and I work for the Institute on Disabilities at Temple University. It's my pleasure today to talk about an SRV theme titled Personal Social Integration and Value Societal Participation, what we're really calling inclusion, relationships, and friendships for students. I'll share with you concepts to help students with disabilities have access to the good things in life and post-secondary inclusive higher education initiatives. So let's talk about what inclusion means. It's adaptive participation by a student as needed in college and universities, and doing so in culturally normative quantity of contacts, interactions, and positive relationships. So more than one or two. It's being involved with as many students as one can be involved in. And you're doing this with ordinary students, faculty, and others, not in a special class or group, but with other matriculating students. And you're doing this in normative shared activities that are part of the recognizable roles, such as being a classmate, being a student, being a club member, athlete, an artist, a volunteer, an intern, and also doing this in valued or at least ordinary physical and social settings at the university and college. And this could be in classrooms, in the labs, in the dining areas, in the dorms, recreational areas, the library, at fraternities, sororities, in the surrounding campus community. Now, so when we talk about this definition, I want to bring your attention to these three boxes on this image. Now, the first area talks about social contacts with other students and faculty. So what we mean here is that a student with an intellectual disability should have person-to-person contacts and relationships, friendships with other people. This could happen in small groups of students, could happen in large groups. The middle column is really talking about where this takes place, and it should be taking place in the ordinary settings on campus that all matriculated students would be going to. So that might be in the classrooms, in the labs, at the community room, the activity centers, the libraries, the cafeterias, housing, the neighborhood, athletic facilities. So again, you want to utilize the same settings that other students would be using on campus. And then the third column is doing this as valued activities like all other students. And that would again be in intramurals, in being involved in clubs or in outings, going to sporting events or participating in sports, going to concerts, to other social events, cultural events on campus, being in the classroom, being in the college dorm, having meals with other students. So again, this idea around inclusion is that it's with other people, on typical settings on campus, and in activities that everybody else would be doing. It's really important to understand what we mean by inclusion, because people have different concepts and they use the word inclusion in many different ways. We want to be clear about what we mean. Now, some people talk about inclusion as if it's mainstreaming or dumping a student into university or college. That's not what we're talking about, because we realize that students oftentimes need some adaptation, some accommodations, some services that can assist them to participate on campus. So this is not about sink or swim, just jump into the pool and hope for the best. That's not what we mean by inclusion. For some people, inclusion would mean denying students needed special services. That's not what we're meaning at all, because we know that students with intellectual disabilities and all students need to have oftentimes other help, other support to help them be successful students. It doesn't mean using university college services non-inclusively. And if we look at the last point here, having a program just for students with disabilities on campus as a special program, that is not what we're speaking about as inclusion. And yet universities and colleges oftentimes might have programs for students on campus with intellectual disabilities, but they're non-inclusive. They're just with other students with disabilities, or they're special programs, even in special buildings sometimes. That's not what we mean. For us, inclusion means being really part of the university, college campus like everybody else, again, in contacts and relationships, in settings, and doing the same activities that other matriculated students would be doing. So why do we want to develop inclusive higher education initiatives with the emphasis on inclusion? Now, there's many reasons in support of social inclusion of students with disabilities at university and college. And again, remember at a previous presentation by Darcy about devaluation and the devalued roles and the harm done to people with disabilities, what Wolfensberger called wounds in the introduction to social role valorization. We know that many people with disabilities have really been excluded. So there are 10 benefits to students with a disability in an inclusive university college initiative that I want to speak to. Safety. There's safety in numbers. Many exclusive, congregated, segregated programs, there's no one there to speak up. They're all students with the same disability. They can't defend themselves. So we feel a benefit to students when they're included in university or college is safety, because colleges are all about safety for all their students. Number two, enhancement of competencies. When you're around other students, it's hard not to become competent, because you're in the presence of others who are learning, who are growing, who are challenging themselves. That's going to rub off on a student with an intellectual disability equally as well. We also, for number three, university and college settings elicit normative behavior and expectations. When you go off to college, you're expected to grow, to learn, to attend classes on time, to do all the things expected of a young adult looking to enter the world of work. So that would equally be a benefit to a student with an intellectual disability. Number four, there's valued models, other matriculating students all around campus. So a student with an intellectual disability is rubbing shoulders literally every day with students in the dorm, in the lunchroom, on the playing fields, in intramurals, in classrooms. So again, many valued models. And we all know that when we went to college, if you did go to college, that you did feed off of other people that you wanted to emulate. Number five, gosh, there's so many opportunities, and a variety of opportunities on the college campus, university campus, and again, that's a benefit to students with intellectual disabilities who frequently have had limited opportunities in their K-12 programs in high school. Number six is the exercise of rights and citizenship privileges. That's what college is about, is becoming a self-determining citizen. I mean, it's all about that. And we know that many times for students with intellectual disabilities, they have limited or no rights. They're not expected to be citizens. So a university setting really promotes that. Number seven is you meet many people so you can form relationships. Again, people with disabilities oftentimes don't have much social capital because the only people they come in contact with are other people with intellectual disabilities. But when you're on the grounds of a college or a university, you are around so many people and so many opportunities to form relationships. And we talked earlier about social capital, and that's what college and university oftentimes is about. Number eight, enhancement of personal image. Again, we know that for many people with disabilities, because of segregation and congregation, their own personal images have been that of being devalued. But being on a college campus, I mean, just going to college itself is a positive image. The logos, the signs, the hoopla about being at college, it elevates how you're perceived and how you're looked at. And equally, that would have the same impact on a student with an intellectual disabilities. And number nine, we know that services are based on rights rather than pity and charity. Going to college, you don't go to college because people are feeling sorry for you or want to give you charity. It costs money to go. Students have a right to go off to college. So it's based on this idea of rights and ability and not pity and charity that people with disabilities have to fight all too often. And number 10, we think a benefit is the strengthened self-image of a young person with an intellectual disability going off to college. They are going to feel so good about themselves. They're going to be around other people. You just see the growth in their sense of self and their own image, their ego, their ability to look people in the eye, to stand up for themselves. This is all about strengthening self-image. And this, again, happens almost for all matriculating students. Equally, not only are there benefits to students with intellectual disabilities, there's also benefits to other interested people, whether that's family or other students or faculty at the university or college. So number one is mindsets of other students, faculty, staff can change. And we've talked about mindsets earlier, okay? So we know that changing mindsets is crucial. When someone has that aha moment and they go, I didn't know that a person with Down syndrome could learn, could do these things. That's a mindset shift and change that's really important. So that's another benefit. And then number two, there's a benefit to family and friends because they have pride. You know, many families have been taught not to think in a prideful way about their sons and daughters because there was such low expectations. But going off to college, it makes families just proud. You just beam that my son or daughter is going off to college. And why wouldn't that be the same sort of sense that parents of a child with a disability would have as well? Now, equally, there's benefits to society. You know, one is that there's a great likelihood that the student will now contribute to society. One of the big problems has been we've made people with disabilities dependent. They're on government assistance and certain programs. They're all paid by others, all on taxpayers' dollars. When you go off to college, the expectation is that you're going to come out of there with a job in mind, a field in mind, a career in mind, so that now a person with an intellectual disability can work. And we know studies have shown they'll make much more going off to college economically than they would if they went off to a sheltered workshop or stayed at home. So they're going to now be able to be a taxpayer. And equally, number two, it broadens society's acceptance and even celebration of differentness. We see people who are not like us, but we can start to be accepting because we're breaking bread with, we're spending time with, we're walking on campus with, we're in classes with, we're going off to events with. It changes mindsets, as I said earlier, but equally, society becomes more accepting of people who are different. So we know that universities and colleges are great facilitators for inclusion as they're established to be inclusive. And as we see in the three areas of setting, class groupings, and images, messages, okay, what inclusive higher education initiatives need to be mindful of is the drift that occur if you move away from the culturally valued analog, the CVA that we've spoken about earlier, and towards special programs for people with disabilities. So for example, if you create a special setting, building, just for students with disabilities, group all those students, or many of them, in the same course at the same time with other students with disabilities. Use images in your language, in your media, your written material that portray the students with disabilities in any of the devalued roles we've previously spoken about. The eternal child, pity, charity, sick or ill, and our human service client being dependent. We don't want to do that. So you should always be asking yourself, are my actions and decisions facilitating inclusion for the students? Or am I even unconsciously drifting towards segregation and congregation and placing barriers in the way of inclusion? We want to be green lights for inclusion, not red lights for non-inclusion. So again, let's go back to the definition we cited earlier around inclusion: personal social integration and valued societal participation. And it consists of these aspects. And again, we want the students to participate. We want them to be into a normative number of contacts and interactions and relationships with all sorts of other students on campus. We want them to be with ordinary students and not in special places or special classes. And we want them to be doing the same activities that other matriculating students would be doing. And we want this to be carried out in all the settings that exist on a college campus, okay, just like other matriculating students. Let's talk a bit about strategies of how an inclusive higher education initiative can make all this happen. Okay? Well, first, the course of study should be based on the students' interests, because that's going to be then the opportunity for them to be with other students they have something alike with, something to talk about. We need to help develop contacts in the student's field of interest. If I'm interested in acting, then I should be exposed to other actors. I should be encouraged to be part of a club or a group that's about acting, so my field of interest can be elevated. We need to support students in multiple roles, maybe getting a job around acting, being an intern, in an acting organization, being a member of the club, the acting club, and with any adaptations that might be needed to help that student to be in that valued role. We need to surround students with positive images, and this is why we want to steer away from special programs, because when students with disabilities are around other students with disabilities, that image becomes one of being disabled. People learn how to be disabled. So we want students to be surrounded with positive images. And universities and colleges have so many positive images. And we want to foster valued social roles for students. To be a student, to be an intern, to be a club member, to be a friend to others, to be an athlete, whatever those roles are, we want to really foster valued roles for students with intellectual disabilities and certainly steer away from all those devalued roles we've spoken to earlier. Some other strategies. We want to find and emphasize backgrounds, interests, activities, involvements that students and potential integrators, others similar to them, share. We want to pair up students and valued others in cooperative tasks where chances of success are good. Class projects and assignments, study groups, intramural club activities, travel, community activities like a neighborhood cleanup. We want to pair students together so they can learn from one another. We want to request, elicit, and structure satisfying, direct, personal, helping involvements by matriculated students, faculty, and others who are valued with a student with a disability. And we also want to reward and reinforce any integrative gestures or acts by valued persons, whether that's by us just thanking a faculty member for bending over backwards to really help that student be part of that class, whether it's about accepting adaptations, whatever it happens to be. But we want to make sure that people who are doing the right thing hear about it in nice ways. Not pity and charity, but just that they know to continue doing the actions that they're doing. Here's some really important considerations about relationships, including friendships for students. Students with disabilities are encouraged to have relationships, including friendships, with other matriculated students without disabilities, participating in valued activities and in typical university, college, and community settings. That's paramount. Secondarily, students with disabilities certainly can have relationships with other students with disabilities if they chose those relationships. Not because of your initiative segregated and/or congregated activities or structures or programs. You know, I'm Italian, so I have Italian friends, but I have more than Italian friends, and I've chosen my Italian friends. So students with disabilities can choose other students with disabilities, but it should be on their grounds, not because of what we've set up for that to occur and to happen. Now, here's something really important to consider. Most inclusive higher education programs for students with intellectual disabilities do hire mentors and tutors to assist students with intellectual disabilities on campus. And these mentors and tutors are typically in paid roles. So there's a little conflict here in them becoming friends to the student with an intellectual disability. Now, that oftentimes happens because people enjoy each other's company. But it's typically after the mentorship or the tutorship is over that those friendships can occur. So we got to be very careful that we don't place mentors and tutors in these friendship roles when it's conflicted with pay, and wait until those roles are over. But those mentors and tutors can be wonderful gatekeepers. What I mean by that, they can open the door to their network of friends and relationships, have the students they're mentoring or tutoring meet other people, so they open the door to other students to become friends with and start relationships with students with intellectual disabilities. Here's an example of a former mentor. When her role as mentor ended, she enjoyed the relationship so much, she became Michael's friend. She's no longer being paid. This is on her own terms, because she and Michael have a bond. They have some commonalities that have created this friendship. And here's a selfie they took during a visit to Dave & Buster's in Philadelphia, a place to go have a lot of fun, like any other college students might be doing. Now, here's Michael and two of his friends taking a selfie, and that's what friends do, by the way, okay, with their finished cauliflower culinary creation. And you just look at their faces. They're having a good time together. And there's no money exchanging hands here. They're not mentors. They're not tutors. When you're in a college, you make friends. Here's my son Griffin, who was a mentor for Bilal at Temple University's Inclusive Higher Education Initiative for the 2 years in 2012 to 2014. And they're posing at Presque Isle in Erie, Pennsylvania back in 2014. Now, their relationship lasted after the mentoring ended, and Bilal and Griffin became fast friends. Bilal would take a bus from Philadelphia to spend a week with our family in Pittsburgh, and when Griffin goes to Philadelphia, he would seek Bilal out to go out and have dinner and do things. Griffin lives in Harrisburg now, and Bilal has visited him there a number of times. Now, Griffin graduated from Temple in 2016, and today is still friends with Bilal. Sean Alialong, who's a student at the Temple University Inclusive Higher Education Initiative, which was only a two-year program at that time, sent me this Instagram picture showing him with other Temple University student government representatives on the field at homecoming in 2018. Now, Sean is the individual on the end with the white shirt on, and Sean told me he's still close friends with two of the students he met there. And that's how it works. Also, Sean sent me this picture of his recent time shadowing someone working in the Philadelphia District Attorney's Office that Sean was introduced to from someone else he knew. So relationships can lead to all sorts of other relationships and opportunities. You can never have too much social capital. Now here's Colton, who attends the Duquesne University Initiative. He's at the Square Cafe with two of his friends that he met through one of his tutors, but they're not paid to be in his life. They're just become friends. And he wanted to show them his favorite place and where he worked in Pittsburgh. Colton is with different friends at Night Spot, which is a hangout at Duquesne University, doing nighttime stuff that college students do. Colton is with friends exercising at a Duquesne University. He wanted to exercise to his favorite music, so his friends created a Zumba routines with his favorites. Again, that's what friends do. Here's a recent photo of Colton at a trivia night when he carried his team on Grease trivia, winning a prize. Hanging out, doing things friends do. Here's Colton presenting at a national conference as lead presenter. He submitted a proposal. He added some of the peer tutors as his team to the proposal. Now, this is important because Colton now is the one making the connections for people. He's the one giving the peer tutors a chance to be part of a national conference. We all too often shortchange people with disabilities that they can't be the connectors, and Colton is very much a connector. So as we bring this presentation to a close, here's some really important questions to consider. Have you done all you can do to ensure students are included in all aspects of college, university life? Do students have meaningful relationships and friendships with other matriculated students, faculty, and others? And do you prevent segregation and congregation of students on and off campus? So I thank you very much for listening to this presentation, and I hope it's been informative and will be useful to you.